Hey. Okay, so totally unscripted. I am going to talk to you about gun control and what happened in Florida. Um, First of all, my heart goes out to the families and victims of the shooting in Florida. It was a very tragic event, and I'm just, I'm really deeply sorry it happened. That there needs to be fucked up people in this world that do things like that to our kids. That's really messed up. That's really bad. Um, I just can't fathom what these families must be going through right now. Really, I can't. Um, it's a tragedy to lose a child that's so young and had such a bright future ahead of them because of some psycho. It must be devastating for them, and it's devastating to the rest of us in America and all over the world, probably. Um, but what I've noticed in the days that have followed it are a rash of people posting about gun control and gun laws and totally disregarding the tragedy going on, just using it for their own political agenda. Now suddenly we should ban all the guns, or we should ban AR 15s, or we should, enforce stricter gun rules. So I was just going to talk to you a little bit about my own feelings on the matter and, you know, see if I can get some feedback and see what you guys think. Um, So, first of all, I do not support banning guns at all. I think that a more, a better way of solving the problem would be to, you know, add more armed security into the schools, for instance, add more guns into the school to stop the bad people coming into the school with guns, because then they can stop them before it becomes a problem. But that's not addressing the actual issue here, which is that this is all happening from some really, fucked in the head people. Um, every time this happens, it comes up that it was somebody really mentally messed up in the head, and they had a history of, violence or issues in school or issues at home or something like that. And so, one of the options that people are advocating is mental health checks. Now, I'm actually okay with the mental health checks to an extent. I think that that's going to also be detrimental, though, because, like, what if a veteran wants to own a gun? Veterans are coming back with all these mental problems and issues, and they're coming back and they want to buy a gun for protection in their home because they see that the country is going to shit and they want to be prepared, and they have every right to be prepared. And they're coming home and they wouldn't be allowed to buy a gun because they don't pass a mental health check. I think that that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, I don't know if that's a legit thing that would happen because these laws have not been enacted, but I think that it's a legit thing that could happen. And, I think that that's one of the flaws in advocating for gun control or mental health checks and gun control. Um, I think that the idea of banning something like the AR 15 is not a good idea, because once you ban one gun, you open the door to ban other guns. And I think that that would be detrimental because, it's just going to snowball. It's just going to be like, oh, we got one gun banned, so now we're just going to point out all the bad things that this other gun has done, and we're going to use that as justification to ban this other gun, and suddenly we're without guns. I think that that's pretty ridiculous. I think that if a rational minded person wants to own an AR-15, that they should be allowed to. But I do think that maybe, there should be some sort of screening of some sort. I just don't know how to go about that. I haven't come to the conclusion yet of how they would go about that. But that's not my job. I'm just a citizen. It's, policymakers' jobs to figure out the best way, and then we all vote on it. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that they're just going to scream and cry and complain, and nothing is ever going to be changed. Um, you know, People keep pointing out all the things that happened with all these AR-15s. Well, if we ban the guns and take away the guns, then you end up with a situation like in the UK where people go to using knives in cars. You can't possibly ban everything that could hurt people. People are going to hurt people if they want to hurt people. That's not that's just something that they do. That's in their brains, that's how they are, that's what's going to happen. Um so I think that banning guns outright is a ridiculous notion. Um, but yeah, more security in schools definitely would be a major start to stopping this. And then the second portion ends at home. Parents aren't parenting their kids anymore. They're not taking care of their kids. They're not nurturing them. They're not helping them develop into sound, rational minded adults. So you're ending up with a bunch of very confused, very messed up in the head individuals that don't understand themselves or other people, that don't understand compassion. You're sitting there and you're expecting a TV to teach your toddler the ABCs instead of actually teaching them the ABCs themselves. You're sitting there expecting school to teach them social interaction when social interaction starts at home. You need to start out at home setting good examples of what good, appropriate social interaction is. And then you take that onto the school, they take that into school with them because they learned a foundation of it. Families are the foundation in which we learn all of our skills in life. If we don't have a stable family, then we're more likely to not succeed. And I think that, building up families and bringing back more, potentially traditional values in family rearing would maybe make it a little bit better for students growing up, and we would have a lot less crazies out there. Apparently this kid was taken into a home and was allowed to bring his gun with him, and they knew how messed up he was, and they knew that he was having problems in school, and they still didn't look into it. He made a post on YouTube and the FBI wasn't able to find him. There is some major holes going on here. And the fact that the FBI wasn't able to find him, I think is pretty preposterous because he used his real name, so they should have been able to find him, but they didn't. So part of me thinks that something might be going on here that, we don't know about, that caused them to ignore this case for some reason or another. Which is pretty disturbing when you think about it. But, I think that the family should have been more aware of what he was doing and been more aware of where he was, been more involved in his life, been more into his counseling or whatever he was going through. They put him in a program to get his GED, but I don't think it mentioned them putting him in counseling. I think that the family could have gotten more involved in helping this obviously mentally disturbed kid. Now, on the other hand, I'm seeing stuff about that he's remorseful now, and he's like saying that they're painting him to be this scared kid that, didn't understand anything, and that he's so remorseful. I personally think that that's just a scam. I think that's just a cover up. Yes, I admit, he's probably a scared kid, but I think that that's just a cover up. Um, and it's something that his lawyers are presenting to try to make him seem innocent so that he gets off on a lesser sentence than he would have if he were like just straight up crazy. Um, I think that it's all concocted by the courts. I think that this is going to be a huge mess. I think that we're going to see a lot of this before it's actually over. Um, and yeah, I'm appalled by what's going on, and by the lack of responsibility of the parents and the lack of ownership that the society around him is taking for not raising this child properly. Um, or paying attention or catching the warning signs. There were plenty of warning signs and it was ignored. Why? We'll never know. We will never know the real reason that all these warning signs were ignored. Whether it's some sort of conspiracy and they wanted it to happen, or if, it's just that people are so liberal nowadays that they don't see what's right in front of them, which I think is more so the case. Um, I think that we just really need to start paying attention and keeping an eye out on people more, and watch ourselves, watch our kids, watch our backs, put more security in schools, and, you know, hopefully write it out. Maybe if we make enough of a fuss about it, then we can start getting these parents to start parenting their kids again. But I mean, we've been making a fuss about it for ages and they haven't started yet. So I think that the future generations are just kind of fucked if we don't really make a drastic change. And I think that by speaking and not being silent about it, that we can be the change that we want to see in the world. We just need to use our voice.